Well, that brings me to a kind of related question. In what ways, if any, and I think you've already hinted at it, has your immigrant experience informed your research or career interests and focus?
It in so many ways. I ultimately when I started when I thought about my dissertation work, right, and what I said a little bit earlier that this experience is I really continue to see within our community that there were young people who were now coming into Madison, Wisconsin. And again, some they were with their parents, caregivers. Others, they parent caregiver had come first, and then they came later. But noticing also the pattern of so many unaccompanied young people to Madison, Wisconsin, that were now living with another family member, at times even a friend, and how they were navigating spaces of schooling, spaces that at that point mostly might have had English as second language education with very minimal bilingual, and having to make choices around fundamentally work. So I was so deep in the community, I had a mirror moment, right? I was looking at myself in the mirror and I'm just like, yeah, that's me. That was my experiences, and just making some critical connections for myself. And then I also thought, no one, this is an area that no one has really fully studied. A lot of the work that we've known about family separation related to immigration when I was going to do my dissertation was really based with many Caribbean families, and then what has been coined as parachute kids, right? That oftentimes are Asian origin, but nothing that really spoke to this diaspora of ways that immigrant origin families, particularly Latinx families, immigrate into this country, whether it's separation, reunification, or unaccompanied minors and or similar migration. And the exception was some of the work you already had done, right? But fundamentally, it's like the literature was, there was something missing in it. And I even became very fascinated more around our young people who were unaccompanied minors, right? And the central purpose they had in coming to the United States, and how they were navigating family in their country of origin, specifically working to send remittances back to their family, had not located schooling just yet, right? And they were oftentimes living with a sibling or even someone they knew from their country of origin, neighbors, so on and so forth. And what that meant for them in terms of more the academics, but also more for me, psychosocial adjustment in the white space. Because I was interested in the social cultural context around what it means to exist in a predominantly white space.
In context of reception.
Exactly, and what that experience was. And in the ways that, to a small degree, the service providers that existed in the community were so committed to finding resources and creating resources for our recently arrived immigrant origin communities at large. So and again, right, I returned back to my basic training of interviewing, that I was enthralled, I was inspired, and to offer a space for young youth to share what that experience was for them was really important for me. To lift a voice that oftentimes we don't want to hear from or we don't want to know about.
And you did an exemplary job. Love the work that you began and that you've been continuing to do. So can you please share a little bit about, so you get your passport, which is how I think about a doctoral degree, a passport for the next step. So what was the next step after that for you? What were your plans post-graduation? Tell us a little bit about what, I think you did a postdoc afterwards. So can you tell us a little bit about that? what were you planning on doing, and how did that go?
What I was great at, and I'm just honest, I was great at as a qualitative researcher.
What's the past
And what I mean,
tense?
what was, right? Because I'm gonna put the what needed to happen next, right?
Okay.
I was trained very well as a more of a qualitative researcher with like a slice of quantitative work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I knew was that I'm like, if I'm going to fully pursue this academic trajectory in terms of the academia, I need to make sure that I can navigate both worlds well. So as I was looking into that, right? 1 year at the Site for Research on Adolescent Conference, I caught a session that spoke to me that I wanted to see, which ultimately was the person I completed my postdoc with. And I said, this is work I want to be able to do around, again, right, really re-centralizing or reconsidering how we talk about our young people of color, fundamentally, right? What are the narratives that we want to make sure that we create that really lifts the many amazing, ingenious ways that our young people of color show up, right? And that the counter narrative has really been around the pathologizing and that at-risk language, ... that has been historically problematic. So once I saw this presentation, I said, this is what I want to go work with, right? After I'm done with my degree, coupled with the fact that I knew that I wanted to enhance whatever quantitative skills I had. Okay. So at that point, I applied for a National Science Foundation postdoc and ultimately ended up at New York University to complete my postdoc there. From that experience, there's a lot of pieces I learned, right? And one partly is this, right? I did get the additional quantitative methods, right? But I always say if you don't use it, you lose it, right? So that's the bottom line with quantitative.
Also, man.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with quantitative. Like if you're not using quantitative skills every single day, it's like, what was that random effect? Oh yeah, that's what it was. Okay, I gotta go back and look at that multi-link. I gotta go look back into that MLM actual book to figure out like what it was again. So I completed my postdoc there, and I think as I finished up my postdoc and thought about, is this what I want to do in terms of an academic career trajectory, and kind of holding, right, that I thought at least that since undergrad, every step that I had made or every space that I had been had prepared me for the academic track. I think finishing in my postdoc, I was like, there's ways that this is not my trajectory. There was something that was missing for me. One, it was really recognizing that based on my knowledge and what I had heard, that academia doesn't fully really value you actually wanting to be in schools, in districts, and in community organizations to actually support. That's not as valuable.
Pragmatic applied work is not
exactly, and that's who I am, right? As like I said earlier, right? My first love was
motivates you.
Yeah, my first love was research, but my other love
applied to positive change.
How do you actually utilize research as the context for change in an impactful way, right? And then I think just existing initially, in spaces I was in just turned me off. It completely turned me off into an academic, full academic career trajectory that ultimately, before then, led me to you. So at that point, you and I met probably the first year I started my postdoc, and I was just like, I need to do something different, and I need to figure out to know that it's not all special in academia, because I'm like, it's feeling pretty special over here in many ways. So meeting you and also meeting at least Dr. Jackie Matisse, who was at applied psychology as well, kind of normalized some ways around that. No, academia is not supposed to be this way.
Doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to be this way. It does not have to be this way. There are enough folks in academia who want to mentor students, support individuals, students to move them through a career trajectory that is supportive and does not take away from students. So meeting you in so many ways was my blessing, right? Because then the opportunity to work alongside with you, but and in that context, create a whole study that again spoke to the civic engagement of young Latine youth, adults, was just powerful to be able to just work alongside you to develop questions, to actually the interview questions, the actual survey questions, and to move through that whole process in a collaborative, loving, kind, supportive way, I think was just powerful. And in there, I think I also, for me, had that itch around, I always loved being in schools. There's something magical that always happens in schools, and that's really children. Mm-hmm. There's so many ways that for me, right, a good portion, I think, of my undergrad years were spent with young children, that I was excited to potentially be in school. So when the Civic Engagement Project left, right, and to see the ways that you opened another door for me, right, to just fully work with Metro Center proper, right, and for me to then start working just at Metro Center and being a trainer and a technical assistance provider, I think that was like I found my other love, right? I had love number one, I had love number two, now damn, I got love number three, where I'm able to bring love one and two together.
Perfect. What else can you ask in life?
Yeah, what else can I actually ask for that now?
And really being the change. I mean, every day you're out there making change for kids. Mm-hmm. Can you describe a little bit what you do for the audience, and on a, like, what exactly you would describe as sort of the essence of what you do, and then I want to describe for the audience how you continually use your academic skills. So I want to get back to that first. If you can describe a little bit for the audience what your job.
I just say I always say like I'm a field worker deep in the weeds, and I say that from the place is a majority of my work is that I provide training and technical assistance to school districts and schools throughout New York State and the country around culture, responsibility, and education, anti-racist work. And particularly part of my work and my colleagues' work is to build capacity among educators to be able to implement culture responsive education systems that will be responsive to every student. And so part of that work is really moving through this continuum of having educators do their self-work so that they could create practices and sustain behaviors that ultimately lead to systems change that are connected to beliefs, policies, and practices and procedures, right? I think the failure is that sometimes educators, fundamentally well-intended, fail to realize is that they bring their full self into school through their beliefs. And that their beliefs are guiding their practices. Specifically, when you hold social identity markers and power and privilege that is different than the children and the families that you are in school with, right? Mm-hmm. And coupled with the fact that 87% of our staff, our teaching staff, are still white females. And the ways that our demographics have shifted across the board around seeing many of our children are Black and brown children in school settings. Mm-hmm. and in the ways that unless you do the personal work that connects it to the beliefs you bring into the system and then the practices, we still continue to harm and fail Black and brown children. And the danger of it has always been that it's been normalized and acceptable that Black children are failed, that brown children are failed. So I say that I live deep in the weeds, right? And am one that loves the field work, because this is an entry point around creating a space, a community of educators who can really begin to transform a classroom, a school, and district.
Mm-hmm.
Through capacity building, through support of actually moving through personal work to create practices, right? Because a whole lot of pieces that enter, that the baggage that goes into with educators is the deficit thinking that they hold for our children, specifically Black and brown children, alongside poverty disciplining, alongside color evasiveness. Mm-hmm. That anytime I see children not color, and the actual danger of that is when you have Black children in your classroom, what you just did is minimize and erase the experiences that Black children have as Black children fundamentally in a racialized, race-based, racist society, right? Mm-hmm. And so part of our work is for that lean in, right? To understand yourself, because if you don't understand yourself first, you can't be culture responsive to anybody. Mm-hmm. You really can't, because you bring in a great package, but you bring in some baggage with you, right? So a lot of our work then centers around how do we begin to chip away at systems that, again, right, for me, a system has beliefs. Mm-hmm. People bring beliefs into the system. It is educators. They create policies based on beliefs. Mm-hmm. They also create practices and procedures based on the beliefs. So we're chipping away at them to be able to address then what are disproportionate racialized